Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Today we talk to George Thomas, who made history when he became the first Indian American judge in Austin and Travis County when he was appointed to the municipal court in 2014. Judge Thomas graduated from Trinity University in 1998 with degrees in both biology and history and the University of Houston Law Center in 2002. He's been a prosecutor for the city of Austin and the criminal division of the Travis County Attorney's Office. Judge Thomas is active on the South Asian Bar Association, the Indian American Coalition of Central Texas, and serves on the board of Ballet Austin. I'm pleased to have with us today Judge George Thomas.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us.
Of course, I'm glad to be here.
So my first question is, why did you want to be a lawyer?
Well, I wanted to be a lawyer because I didn't get into medical school. It was the end of college, and I had already received rejection letters from the medical schools I applied to. And I was wandering around campus, and I ran into a friend of mine who had a chem degree and also didn't want to be a chemist. Same way I didn't want to be a biologist. So we started chatting, and his counselor had told him to think about law school because they want people with different critical thinking skills and people who did things other than government, politics, poli-sci, things like that. So he and I went to the library right there on campus, got a LSAT study guide, and started just taking some practice exams. We thought it was kind of fun playing the little logic games. And about 6 weeks later, we both took the LSAT. And so when I applied to medical school one more time, I went ahead and applied to law schools. And then I had also gotten into a MHA MBA program. And in the end, I decided to go with law school. One reason is my mom was sick at the time in Houston, and I could go to law school in Houston and be home with them. But another reason was that law school was 3 years long. So it was 3 more years to hide from the world and figure out what to do since I didn't get into medical school. And the MHA MBA program was only going to be about 1.5 years because I had done so many of the prereqs in undergrad. And then I figured when you're talking to somebody, you're talking to a girl, and you say, I'm in an MHA MBA program, you then have to explain what an MHA is. And it's a kind of a boring explanation. But when you say law school, everyone knows what that means. So, yeah, that's how I ended up in in law school, really.
And do you tell your family that being a lawyer is just as good as being a doctor?
No, I don't tell them that. They had no idea what being a lawyer was. It just wasn't a thing. And I mean, I'll be honest, I was the first lawyer I knew. So I had seen some lawyers from afar when I worked in the hospital. One of the research projects I did was developing a device. So I'd seen some of the patent attorneys there, but I didn't know anything about how it worked, which is why I applied to 30 law schools. So I spent a lot of money on application fees. But for my parents, they didn't really care what was going on or what I was doing. I made this big pitch to go to New York for law school. I researched it, figured out how to get an apartment, and told them this is what I want to do now. And they both looked at me and said, "That's great. No, you're not doing that. Your mom's sick. You need to stay here." Because my youngest brother was still in grade school at the time.
Fortunately, you found a law school in Houston, and you could do both.
And I could do both. And it turned out, I thought, well, okay, I'll try and be a patent lawyer. And it turned out University of Houston was the #1 patent school in the country at the time. And even my brothers were like, "You got into that school?" And I was like, "Okay." People were a little shocked by that, but yeah. So it just kind of worked out. And of course, back then, U of H was ridiculously affordable. I did all of law school for less than the cost of 1 year of my undergrad. So
wow.
Yeah.
So then you spent the majority of your career before you became a judge as a prosecutor.
Yes.
What is the best piece of advice you got as a prosecutor?
On my first time in a trial, my first week of work, an older prosecutor came in, threw a file on my desk, and just said, "Here, you're doing this trial right now." I had been spinning in the chair, staring at the ceiling, going, "I can't believe I have a job. I'm wearing a suit. I'm in a courtroom," because I had had about 2 years of struggle and unemployment and underemployment. Trial started, and I proved up this no seatbelt case like it was a murder, logged into my Westlaw, pulled out the code book, exasperated the judge. And afterwards, I got through everything with the trial, and I went to the guy and I said, "What was that? Why did you do that?" And he said, "Well, if I wait for you to say I'm ready to do this, you're never going to say that because we're lawyers and we're trained to worry about what's going to go wrong and be prepared for that." He said, you just need to get into a trial, realize something's going to go wrong, blows up in your face. Don't freak out. He said, the worst that's going to happen is a judge or jury is going to say not guilty. And if that's what they want to do, let them do that. That's their role in the process. He said, as long as you don't lie, as long as you don't let your witnesses lie, nothing's going to happen to you. And so I think that was it. After that, it made it very easy. And I guess kind of along with that, another prosecutor there told me, don't worry about winning your case. Just do the best you can with the evidence you have. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And that's what the community's here for, to decide guilty or not guilty. So that made it a lot easier for me because I really don't like public speaking. And that's what being a courtroom lawyer is.
So then you become a judge. How does that happen?
So before I was a prosecutor, I had been doing immigration work. And, in immigration court, I'd been doing refugee asylum cases, and I'd been doing kind of that version of a jail release when someone's in custody. So I had a lot of hearings in front of judges, but they were very simple things. At the holding center in Houston, the courtroom was actually a storage closet. They put a bench in at the end. You had to walk in sideways. The government attorney would walk in sideways. And they wouldn't even bother with handcuffs on your client because the room was so small. You weren't going to be protected if your client went crazy. But getting to know the judges from there, it just felt like that was a better fit for me. When I became a prosecutor, I got to know the judges, of course, because we were in court every day with them. And I guess they also kind of put it in my head, like, you don't really seem like the gladiator here. You seem more like the referee. And that's kind of how I describe what being a judge is. You're more like the referee. These are the rules. Is everyone following them? And, after 10 years of being a prosecutor, once I actually became a judge, I was worried, like maybe this isn't the right thing for me. I'd quit a good job at the county. Yeah, even when I was leaving, one of my supervisors said, "Are you sure about this?" Because, I got appointed to a part-time position at first. I said, "Well, I got appointed. I don't want to be the guy who said no right now, especially after how many times I'd applied for it." The presiding judge at the time told me, there's no guaranteed work when you're part-timer. Are you sure you can do this? And I said, this is kind of the only time I can do this. I don't have a mortgage. I don't have kids. So I only have to take care of myself, and I can survive off very little. And the second I took the bench, I felt like this is the right spot for me, because I realized when I was a kid, whenever we would get a new video game or a new board game, I wouldn't let anyone play until I read the rule book and made sure we knew how to play. And that's what the Code of Criminal Procedure is. That's what the Penal Code is. That's what the Transportation Code is. For municipal court, we deal with a lot of transportation code cases. That's what our city code is. So being the referee really fit my personality more. And, I am the oldest of four. So I'm also used to calming down situations and trying to keep people moving forward to reach a decision.
I think maybe you've just opened the eyes of all of the gamer kids out there.
Yeah.
If you're a gamer, you love rules, and you could be a lawyer or a
no.
judge.
I'm sure no gamers thought of themselves as a rule lover, but that's the only way video games work. That's how coding works. That's how law works.
So I would imagine being a prosecutor for so long gives you great insight into being a judge.
Yeah, it's a little harder for defense attorneys. You may be running around from different courts, and then you've got a lot of work you're doing outside the courtroom as far as client management is concerned. For prosecutors, you're just in court all day, and you get to know all the judges. You get to know everyone's little quirks, but mostly you're not doing the client management side of it. You're dealing with victims and witnesses, but it's very different because it's your case. They're here to help you. Whereas for the defense attorneys, it's really difficult because it is that guy's case. And so, I think being in the courtroom that much helped me realize, judges are regular people. I think I can do this. So I'm not much of an ego person, but you need to have some ego to at least apply for those positions because we revere the position so much. You may not like the judge, but you have to respect the office. And it helped me kind of get over my fear of public speaking and putting myself out there. But also being a municipal court prosecutor helps get rid of any ego you have. When I started at the county attorney's office, I had a defense attorney who started yelling at me saying, "You think you're going to go to trial with this? I'm going to mop the floor with you." And I looked him right in the eye and I said, "Do you have any cases I've lost to pro se children and homeless people?" I'm not worried if I lose to a lawyer. I'm probably going to learn something. He got very angry and then took the plea and walked out because he didn't want to spend the time in a trial. But, when I was being interviewed for my first prosecutor job, the chief prosecutor at the time told me, "Don't worry about winning your cases. Just do the best you can, because mostly you're dealing with a criminal investigation that lasted about 2 minutes that happened 6 months ago. So you're going to lose a lot of cases in the middle of trial." And it's true. Yeah, you run into attorneys who tell you they haven't lost cases. That's because they're not trying enough cases, um, or they're cherry picking only the golden ones, which you can't do. That's not trying a case.
Because of that great advice you got of
Mhm.
you're not always going to win and that's okay. You want to do the right thing. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
How have you paid that forward now as a judge?
There's just a lot of natural mentoring you get to be as the judge in the courtroom. When I first started as a judge, I was 37, so I had a lot of lawyers in the courtroom who were my age or older. Now I am one of the, at least in the middle of the pack or older, so younger attorneys fresh out of school, maybe who don't know better, revere me or revere our position. But also, since I used to be a prosecutor in this court, um, they know that I know what they're going through and what they're dealing with. So when I give them criticisms, they don't take it personally. They know, like, he knows what I'm up against, and he means it this way. So I'm always happy to talk with them when I have newer prosecutors or newer defense attorneys. During trials, I keep a little side notes and I'll make a note of, like, "Hey, don't do this, or you should do this, focus on this." So after trial, I'll let them know, "Hey, I made some notes. If you guys want to hear some practice tips, I have that for you." And invariably, they're always, "Yes, thank God. Let me, come and hear this." And I got that because I had judges who did that for me when I was a younger attorney. I had multiple defense attorneys who would do that for me as well. After kicking me around the courtroom, then afterwards, like, "Hey, let's go grab lunch. Let me talk to you," and then start rattling off all the things I did wrong and the things I could do to beat them next time. So and I don't know if this is in every field, but at least in Travis County, in our criminal prosecution world, um, there's the accusation that everyone's just buddies and gets along and is just trying to get through the day. But a lot of it is that collegiality, because they know you're a prosecutor now, but someday you'll be a defense attorney. You're a defense attorney now, you may join the DA's office later. And so everyone's really here in a helpful mood, and I think it improves the profession.
So you've said a couple of times the word revered,
Mhm.
and you were celebrated, I assume, when you became the first Indian American judge that we had. How were you celebrated for this historic accomplishment?
Well, uh, in obviously in the local Indian community, press releases. My dad's neighbor back in Houston used to run a newspaper in India before he came here. So I had to write up a little story about myself and send him a picture, and they sent it all over India, to all his uh, media outlets there. And this is a smaller position here in our world, but over there in India, it's a huge deal. But also, for them to see, like, someone in America that looks like them, their same name, succeeding. Um, the South Asian Bar Association of North America also was big on promoting people who become public officials, or even just, becoming a partner at a big firm. And so a friend of mine here sent a email to a friend of hers there. So I had to do another press release for them, and they posted it all over their social media. Um, but yeah, that was about it. In the end, again, I don't like self promotion, right? And I just wanted to work, but I had to, speak at classes here and there, and different affinity groups in the community, to go and give talks, and not just about being an Indian judge, but they thought, like, it might hit better if we talk about public safety issues if it's coming from you. And so that was something I had to do, but I enjoy doing it. And if it helps people feel more comfortable and more engaged with the community, that's important. And I'm happy to do that.
When you called it a smaller position, which I understand
Yeah,
why you
yeah,
called it that, but it turns out the municipal court is one of the most progressive ones in Austin. The municipal court gave us our first Latino judge, gave us our first Asian American judge, and it gave us you.
yes,
So maybe sort of in terms of hierarchy and difficulty of cases,
yeah.
maybe that's the case. But in terms of being progressive, it seems like that's a place to be.
It is. Well, I think that's more of a reflection on the city government as well when they're promoting candidates and looking for people. One of the when I first applied for the judge position, uh, it was just on the city website like any other job. That was the only place you could see it. So if you knew someone who knew it was coming, they might tell you go to the city website. But in subsequent years, they realized, we're getting this weird pool of candidates. So let's push it out to the Bar Association, but not just the Austin Bar Association. There's an Asian American bar, there's a South Asian bar, there's the Black Lawyers Association, there's Hispanic Bar Association, there's the LGBTQ, well, now a section of the ABA. And so they started hitting all these affinity groups. But then on top of that, when they had the bar review committee, they asked someone from each of these affinity groups to join the bar review committee to review who the judges were. And I can feel like in the interview process, my second and third time through the interview process, it was noticeable how different the room was, and how if you were someone from a background that is not traditionally in the law, that suddenly you could feel more comfortable looking around this room and seeing people who were like you. And it's one of those, cliche things we say now, representation matters, but it really does. I've been on both sides of it. And, with my complexion, I get to be South Asian and I get to be Latino, depending on the situation, but whatever makes people feel comfortable. Was once people feel comfortable with court, they know the system is here for them. They can come access it. They can come talk to us when they need help, because we have a lot of resources for the public, and especially at our level. Well, again, people think, oh, it's just Class C misdemeanors, but these are the things that touch everybody in the community. In addition to the smaller penal code cases and the transportation code cases, all our quality of life cases as well. And walking into a courtroom and seeing a judge who looks like you, or maybe you think grew up like you, it'll help you feel more confident in the system, that you're at least about to be heard. You may not like the answer you get, but that person on the bench is listening to you with an open ear.
So you've been active in the South Asian Bar Association, the Indian American Coalition of Central Texas, and Ballet Austin.
Yes.
Why are these organizations important to you personally and professionally?
So for South Asian Bar Association, of course, it was, as I said earlier, I was the first lawyer I knew. So I definitely didn't know any other Indian or South Asian lawyers. So finding, our local group here, which was started about 10 years ago, and there was only about 25 of us, and we're not that much bigger now, but you found a group of people, again, who grew up like you and dealing with the same issues as far as career progression and other people's behaviors in the workplace, in addition to the professional connections you get from any bar association. But sometimes the standard bar association can feel like you feel disconnected from it if you don't see people who are like you in there. And for a lot of us, it's common. I think I saw the Bar Journal last week. They said 88% of the profession was white. And obviously that's a shocking number, given the makeup of the city, makeup of our country. So definitely finding, other attorneys who were South Asian was gratifying. And then, of course, so the national organization now, I think we have about 7,000 members in there. So It's really great having this network all over the country um, for referrals or just if you want career advice from someone who did go through what you're doing. And most of the attorneys in our group are still on the younger end because, Chinese Exclusion Act, et cetera, et cetera. Indian people didn't start coming here, South Asian people didn't start coming here till the late 60s, early 70s. So, some of our oldest attorneys are still about early 50s to mid 50s, and that's the oldest one. And those people were definitely pioneers. Even for us growing up, you need to be a doctor or an engineer, and those are the two things. And now parents are more excited about kids going into finance, accounting, the law. Uh, so that's why that was important for me for that. For the Indian American Coalition of Texas, we're a nonpartisan group that just seeks to promote civic engagement with the Indian community here in Central Texas. And what that means is voter registration drives, candidates forums, helping people get connected with their representatives. And it's been very successful in getting that done. And we can hold forums on issues. Sometimes the community will ask, "Can you talk to us about what happened in the legislature this year?" We put on a little program for that. And I didn't want to join it at first. I'll be honest. I ran into one of the founders at another event somewhere, and he said, "Oh, just come by the meeting. Like, we'll chat. You can see what our group's about." And we got to the meeting, me and another person who was about my age. And then while we were chatting, all of a sudden, they nominated us to the board because it turned out it was their election meeting. And so me and her got ordered onto the board. They were trying to basically do a youth movement on their board because people were getting older, and you just always have to refresh things like that. But once I got on there, I could see like how earnest it was, and making sure we get people involved because a lot of times people will think, "Well, I have kids, I don't have time to do this, I don't have time to do that." To keep our democracy going, you have to be an active citizen. And of course, it is difficult to keep up with everything. And that's why an organization like this is important because we can do concentrated things. We can send emails out. If someone puts in a request in saying, "Please explain this bill to me," or "What is Prop A? What is Prop B?" we can put out information about it. And again, it's nonpartisan because there's plenty of partisan things to do in Travis County. So we thought we don't want to turn this organization into that because that might turn into just more infighting.
And it's a good reminder that sometimes if you show up to a meeting, you get a leadership position.
Yes, yes, yes.
So if you want to be in charge of something, show up.
Showing up is huge. And I think people miss this a lot in Austin. But here in Austin and Travis County, our elected officials want to come see. They show up to everything. When I first started going to some local political meetings, it was my third one. And we had a city council member there. And I talked to him a little bit. He was talking to everyone at the meeting. But when the meeting kind of dissipated, I was still hanging out. And he looks at me and goes, "Did you eat yet? Do you want to have dinner?" And because we were in a restaurant, I said, "Yeah, sure." And there I am, my third meeting in Austin. Not anything special. I didn't even live in his district. But we sat down and he talked to me about the city and government and his plans and all that. Um, when he could have just said, "Nice meeting you. Let me go home to my family." So we found anytime we ask for, or I act or uh, group, anytime we ask for politicians to come, there's no shortage of them coming. It's merely a scheduling issue. But so many people want to come and reach out to our groups. And it's not like this in other parts of the country. People are avoiding you. And we just need to take advantage of it.
And on the other end of the spectrum,
Mhm.
Ballet Austin.
So I had done this charity uh, dance competition.
Where
and
you were a dancer.
I was one of the dancers.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And so the partner, it's called Dancing. They used to do this thing called Dancing with the Stars. There's a organization called Pratham that's through UNICEF, and they raise money to build literacy schools in India. And it was started by people in the South Asian community all around the world. So the cities would compete to see who could raise the most money. So in Austin, they would do this Dancing with the Stars competition. And so they'd pair a local celebrity with a dancer. just like the TV show.
Yes.
And so I had a friend of mine who was one of the people running it, and she kept hounding me to do it. And I finally said, "Why are you doing this to me? Like, I'm not a dancer." And she said, "No, you're not going to be one of our professional dancers. You're going to be one of our celebrities." And I said,
Obviously.
"How, you're really screaming the bottom of the barrel for celebrities here." And she said, "We need South Asian people to do this." She goes, "All the white people love doing this, but since it's an Indian charity, we need an Indian person there." So I said, "All right, fine. Yes, I'll suck it up. I'll do it." Because that was the other thing, being, South Asian judge, you get pulled in so many different parts. They want you to do this, they want you to do that. And you have to say yes to those things. That's part of the responsibility, whether you like it or not. So I agreed to it. They paired me up with my dance professional, who obviously was also a electrical engineer. And she taught classes at Ballet Austin, the exercise classes that they have.
Mm-hmm.
So, Ballet Austin would let us use empty studios to practice in. So I was practicing there for months and months and months. And then after the competition, maybe 6 or 8 months later, someone from Ballet Austin called me because I got to know some of the people there. So they called and said, they asked me if I would be interested in joining the board. And so I joined the board, and I'm going into my 10th year now of it. But I don't know. My limits on promoting things, but I like ballet.
Ballet Austin has great programs.
They do. And I didn't know any of the programs until I actually started going there to do my dance practice. But there's tons of PE classes. They work really hard to help get scholarships for kids who want to go into the dance programs, because those things can get expensive. They provide lots of free tickets to performances, and it's one of the few ballet companies in the country that actually runs in the black, because our ballet director is famous and his works get licensed out. And the actual day-to-day executive board that runs it does an amazing job. And the money's managed very well. And they try to use board members to help with things so they don't have to hire too much outside counsel, accountants, things like that.
My one note for Ballet Austin is I once took a class called Ballet Boot Camp. It was like a 6-week, 10-week class. Yeah. And I assumed it would be a boot camp that was full of ballet moves. And no, it was just boot camp.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I was a little bit tricked into jump roping and running when what I wanted was ballet. So if we could, Ballet Austin, have a ballet style boot camp, I would be back in. But I just needed to be disclosed that at the time that I took it, it was push-ups and running and jump rope.
Sure. So it was more a boot camp at ballet.
Correct.
Gotcha.
But they have great things like learn to dance like Britney Spears. There are such fun day of dance. It's a wonderful organization.
I did a bunch of their classes. There was a Beyonce class. There's all sorts of hip hop classes. My partner taught a Bollywood dance class. So it was, that's how I got involved initially with ballet. And then of course, my wife loves the performances and all that too.
So what advice would you give to lawyers who are interested in following in your footsteps?
Once you become a judge, you cannot be an advocate for the parties. You can be an advocate for the law. And what I'll tell you is, if you know you can't do that, you just don't bother being a judge. It's going to be really hard. I mean, for me, someone who was not, again, the gladiator in the arena, when I first started, it was really hard, just keeping my mouth shut, saying, don't say that, keep your mouth shut, don't testify. Or look at the prosecutor going, man, you should not ask anything on cross. You don't need to ask anything of this witness. That was a bad question. So you just got to remind yourself, you are not, you're overseeing the proceeding, you're the referee. And if you can't be that person, it's going to be really frustrating. The other part of it is, if you are afraid of making a decision or afraid of being wrong, it is going to be gut-wrenching. And I've been in front of judges who you could tell, super nice people, afraid of upsetting people. And that is a terrible way to live. You may still be an okay judge, but your life will be miserable. I'm telling you, I was sitting in court at midnight. We had a bench trial, and we have evening trials at municipal court to accommodate defendants and the officers who work overnight, so that trial is on during their shift. And I've been sitting in court at midnight, waiting, watching a judge look back and forth at the diagrams, reviewing a video, looking at his notes. 30 minutes, 40 minutes on in a bench trial. And of course, we're putting our heads down, just say not guilty so we can go home. Because after 40 minutes, you clearly have reasonable doubt, right? So just say not guilty. We're not mad at you. But I could tell how horrible it was for him going back and forth. And you just have to understand you might make mistakes along the way. Do your best not to, of course. But if you live in fear of that mistake, you're not going to enjoy the position, and you may end up missing out on the other ways you can help people.
Thank you so much for chatting with us today. You've given great advice, great stories. The audience is going to love this. And we'll see you next time. Thanks so much.
Thank you.